Okay, I'm going to introduce our folks. And Doug, yes, the recording is available. So what the three of us that are going to be on here tonight, because Chuck's not there, we belong to something called the Vintage Single Sideband Roundtable. It's a group here on the West Coast primarily. And we're a bunch of like-minded vintage radio collectors. So we all have these huge collections of silly stuff. We're obsessed with vintage equipment. We all have modern equipment as well, but the vintage equipment is really what it's all about. Like I say, we're mainly on the West Coast. We have a weekly, what we call a round table on 75 meters. And by any other name, it's just a net, but we go around a round table. And what's always fun is we have what we call the question of the evening. So whoever the host is that evening, and we rotate hosts. We've got a group of people, a group of our members that regularly host. Dave's one of the hosts. I'm one of the hosts. We'll talk more about that as we go along. But anyway, the question of the evening, we have to come up with a question every week, something pertaining to radio, or in particular sideband or vintage sideband. And what we do to keep it fun is we award a golden cup to the best or funniest story that we get. Of course, it's a virtual cup, and we've all won a few of those over the years. And Lisa, how many do you have?
I don't know.
You got a bunch of them. Yeah, even Lisa KS6QNG here, my second up here, has got a bunch of them. She's gotten a bunch of them over the years. We have a group. We're in groups, groups.io. That's our group. If you'd be interested in checking it out, Vintage SSB is the name of the group. You can check that out, see what that's all about. So what's a vintage radio? What do we consider a vintage? Our definition is something manufactured prior to 1980. And that's just the definition from our group. It means that it can be, tube, transistor, hybrid, or it can be something built today using that technology from before 1980. And we got a couple of members that do that. They've built some fabulous radios with pre-1980 technology, but they've built them recently, which is very cool. What's that?
8 minutes.
Okay. So what do? We collect and restore. We do collect and restore radios. You'll see you're going to see some of our collections here before too long, shortly. We operate them. That's the other fun thing. And we do that there are actually multiple vintage nets during the week out here on the West Coast. But some of the manufacturers, I'm going to talk about some of these names you've heard of, some you probably haven't heard of, but these guys, for the most part, most of them are gone. Guys like Collins Radio, R.L. Drake, Hallicrafters, Swan. You're going to see Collins. You're going to see Drake. You'll see some Hallicrafters. You'll see some Swan. We got E.F. Johnson, another company that's gone away. Heathkit, of course, one of the big ones. But how about these guys? Eldeco. Eldeco is another one. We've got a lot of guys that run Eldeco. Geloso, which is an Italian manufacturer of vintage gear. We have one member that collects Geloso equipment, and that's very rare stuff. TMC, or Technical Material Corporation, another really interesting company from back in the 60s and 50s. Central Electronics, one of the first manufacturers of single sideband equipment back in the 50s. And Lakeshore Industries, who was another sideband equipment manufacturer following in the footsteps of Central Electronics. And of course, Yaesu, Kenwood, and ICOM. Some of us have vintage gear from those guys too. So anyway, to kick it off, here are our participants tonight. Dave Jennings, WJ6W. He lives in Tarzana here in Southern California, and he's there on the screen. He's pinned, I think. Yeah, you're pinned, Dave. Chuck, I'm going to cross him out because he's never gotten back to me. He was supposed to be here tonight, but I have no idea what's happened to him. But Glenn's pinned. Glenn Morrison, who lives down in Cathedral City, WB6RLC. And myself, Dennis, W6DQ. You guys have known me because I've been here quite a few times. I am part of the RATPAC committee, the planning committee. So that's our group. And with that, let's stop share. And I'm going to kill this. And I think we can turn it over to Dave. If Dave's ready.
Yeah, I just had to unmute there. You hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Yeah. Well, this is Dave, WJ6W, Tarzana, California. And the shot I have here on the main screen is kind of a still shot, but I also have my cell phone on as WJ6W. Okay, so I'll be using the cell phone as well. So anyway, I'll give you a general overview of what I have here. This Radio Shack is basically a standard 14 by 14 bedroom. I turned into my Radio Shack about, 1990, I guess, or a little before that. And it's, of course, changed over the years, except for most of the vintage equipment I've had for a long time. And so I have 3 levels of equipment here, 3 shelves. At the top level, it's my Drake shelf right now, at least. I have a Drake setup, two radios. On the middle shelf is kind of mixed. On this end is an AM transmitter receiver, a control center, a modern radio, an ICOM 7610, and then an ICOM 7300, which I bought before the 7610 came out. So I like them both. Don't want to get rid of either one of them. And then on the bottom is my Collins S-line gear. So let me go into a little more detail with the cell phone. Let me start at the top here. I have, this is my power meter, which I like very much. It's the Nye Viking, no longer made for a long time. It's a vintage, I guess you'd say. And then I have a Drake transmitter and receiver pair. This is the transmitter, T4XC, and the receiver, the R4C. And then a more modern Drake radio. This is the, we got a lot of reflection there. This is the TR7. So on these 2 receivers, I've kind of upgraded them and added VFO stabilizers. All this old gear, as you may remember, if you use it, is kind of drifty, and it gets worse with the years. But there's a couple of companies that have made little circuits that'll stabilize them. So these 2 radios, I put in VFO stabilizers, and doggone it, if they don't just make them rock solid. You know, you may have to wait a minute or 2 for them to stabilize, but after that, they're pretty much locked on to the frequency you set. So these are my Drake gear. And down below are some Gonset AM transmitter and receiver pairs. These were made for mobile service in the 50s. So the receiver is a G66B, and the transmitter is a G77A. And I'm pretty heavily into AM. So these were my first AM radios when I first got into it over 25 years ago. Don't use them much anymore, but they still have a place on the shelf here. The center, this next thing is my control center, which has kind of grown like Topsy over the years. It's, let's see, I probably built it in 1991, but it's undergone lots and lots of changes. So basically I can select what transmitter I want to use and of course, receiver, or I can also, with these switches, parallel receivers if I want to and listen to 2 at once. This is my antenna selector, which I just have a couple of wire antennas and a dummy load. And so that selects that. And the other things are indicators that show when I'm transmitting and so on. And next to that is an ICOM 7610, which is a wonderful radio. And one of the really neat advantages of that is it has an IP server in it, so it can be directly connected to a network and controlled over the internet. Because I control it over the network. I haven't gone outside the QTH yet to control it, but one of our members does that all the time from all over the place, places like Texas where he has family, and then the ICOM 7300 here. On the bottom row is my Collins S-line gear, which everyone recognizes probably. This is a receiver, a 75S3B, and then this is a transceiver, the KWM2 winged edition, which is one of the older models. And to go along with that is the secondary VFO, the 312B5. So this one, I added a VFO stabilizer to it, and it's, as I said, rock solid. The KWM2 has a very stable VFO. I haven't really had the desire to add a stabilizer to it. It's amazingly solid for a tube type VFO. And then next to it is the linear amplifier, the Collins 30L1, which runs 4 811s. I have 572Bs in there, which are a direct substitute. So that's my Collins setup. And this linear I can use with any of my radios by just changing this selector switch here. So that routes it through the linear amplifier. So that's the microphone that you're listening to is the famous RCA 77DX. And Dennis and I checked it this afternoon. I think it's adequate for me to use wherever I am in the shack tonight. It works well enough. So that's the ham radio side, the pure ham radio side. But I have another side of the shack, and that's my, I guess I'd call it my AM side, but it's also a radio station, really, a radio station from the 1960s, AM broadcast station. So let me go through some of the gear I have in that area. This rack of equipment here is used both for the sideband and the AM. But at the top, I have a power panel that I can turn on various devices that don't have power switches, and I don't need to run them all the time. Like my audio processing, I don't turn on unless I need it for like my AM operation. And I should say that I also have out in the garage, which I can't show you, a huge broadcast transmitter, a Collins 20V2, 1 kilowatt transmitter. And I don't think the Wi-Fi would hold going out to the garage to try to show it to you. But anyway, for those of you who are not familiar, it's about 1,400 pounds and the size of a double wide refrigerator. So anyway, below that, I have a speaker amplifier and then some audio processing gear. This one is a mic Duro, is a Duro discriminant audio processor, very famous in the broadcasting world. And that's one of those that I have on a switch. So if I turn the switch on, then it lights up and it's ready to go. And you can see that my voice is being routed through it right now. Below that is an auto tuner by MFJ, an AM modulation monitor here, and then a AM receiver, the Hammerlin SP600. Which is my favorite. I haven't had too many of these, but it's my favorite AM receiver. Below that is a modern mixer that really all the audio goes through, including the audio from this Collins radio mixer from the 1960s, a winged emblem Collins. And I use it for AM, and I also use it for playing records and things, which I'll show you in just a minute. Above that is some more Duro equipment. This is his peak reading audio meter, which is, he's sold thousands and thousands of those over the years to broadcasters and recording studios. So then above that are two vintage reel-to-reel recorders. The one on the left is an Ampex, gosh, I forgot the model number, 330, is it? Dennis, maybe you know, but anyway, I forgot the model, gosh. Anyway, this is a tube type recorder, and many, many hit songs were recorded on that in the 50s and 60s. And then this is the next generation, and this one happens to be stereo. That's an AG440 Ampex, which is all solid state. Below that is a oscilloscope I watch my modulation on. Okay, moving over, I have to finish the radio station theme. I have two turntables. I have music queued up, which I'll demonstrate in just a moment. And Oh, one other thing I wanted to show is the shop area of my shack. Let me go over there. Hopefully you can still hear me, but I'll just quickly go through. I have test equipment here and a bench. And then I have this all solid state modern AM transmitter called a Super Senior. And it puts out about 350 watts of carrier, which is officially legal limit, and sounds just about as good as a broadcast rig. So it's quite interesting. So to wrap, I suppose I need to wrap things up soon. So, but let me just demonstrate how I might use this mixer to play radio station. Over the years, I've done that. So let me just demonstrate how the turntable works. I just throw this switch up over here and it starts.
She's come undone. She didn't know what she was headed for.
And so that plays through. And if you're running a real radio station and it's top of the hour, you might have a station ID like this.
From Los Angeles,
WJ.
It is the language that you know, but you can't forget from sundown to sunset.
And that's top 40 radio, as you may remember it. Now turn the volume down there. I had to play a little of California Soul for you from California. So with that, I'll turn it back to our host. And thank you for watching.
All right, Dave. Awesome. And I think I managed to unmute myself there somewhere. There. Yeah, okay, I'm working. You got me. Is that a 350 that you got the Ampeg?
350. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. Yeah, 350.
It's the monaural, the single track.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And yeah, you'll see I've got one of those here, but it's a 351, which is the stereo version.
Yeah.
Well, it's a 2-track machine, quarter-inch machine. So, okay, Glenn, if you're ready, it's your turn. So we'll turn it over to you. And I will mute myself.
Thank you. Anyway, Glenn here, WB6RLC, Cathedral City. Dave, I was going to do just what you did, but I just loaded Zoom on my phone like a half hour ago, and then we had problems with the password, so I didn't get to do that. So I'm kind of hardwired here. But anyway, so I hopefully I'll be able to go places and see if you can see down. Yeah, my extension cord doesn't work. So anyway, all the way down right there is about in the middle. You'll see a Gonset G50 and a Allied night radio night kit R55 receiver. Now, I've never plugged either of these in because I don't know if they work or not. But when I was a novice as WN6RLC back in like 1966 or something, I bought and built an R55 receiver, and that was my novice receiver. Not the specific one, but a friend gave it to me, and I just keep it just cause. And then same with the Gonset, that's a G50, 50 watts AM phone on 6 meters. And I did that when I was a technician. And back in the late 60s, propagation was great. And I actually worked Connecticut from Ontario, California, on 50 watts on AM phone. So, it's, that's got a special spot for me. And then along here are some of my other vintage radios. Yeah, too bad the cord's not any longer. But let's see if I at least get it down in here someplace. So yeah, right off over about here is a crystal set. That's it right. Yeah. Is a crystal set with the glenium crystal and all of that. And then another probably from the late 20s. And then next to it is a one with a couple of dials on it, and that looks like some kind of home brew thing, something, because it's not very well constructed. So yeah, I've got quite a collection of all American 5-tube radios. My shack is pretty much like your hallway. It's maybe 10 feet wide and 20 feet long. So you can see some of the old radios. These are like police band and air band. I got a little collection of telegraph keys here. Let's see, I'm making sure I'm still, on the, this one here's a, where is it there? This one here should be it's a Zephyr. There it goes. So that's now a friend of mine, his father was a ham and went silent key, and my friend gave me that, and that's a fairly desirable key. And then some of these are there's an old telegraph sounder here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm having a hard time kind of doing this as we go along, but there's a telegraph sounder and a couple of intrinsically safe telegraph keys. One of them's Russian. So, that's just some of my stuff sitting there. This radio here is the little one next to it are morale radios from World War II vintage. And their purpose was to boost morale and let the guys hear, radios from home and things like that. So they both date from the 40s. So let's see, and also down here, that's a let's see, a transmitter receiver out of a PT boat. Was it a something or other 9? I forget what the number of it is, but I helped a friend's wife who went silent key spent a year cleaning out the estate, and she gave me this radio, and it's in very nice shape. An unused linear I've never used. Down here, let's see. Yeah, there's my Swan Mark II. It'll put out like 2K. So I've got stuff to rebuild it and put it on the air. Some of the projects are the Holocrafters SR160. It's got the cover off of it, and I've been messing with it a little bit. Somebody has already seen the AM gear here, the Cheyenne and the Comanche Heath kits. Got those from Jay. Then down here on the bottom is let's see, that there's another up and coming project. My my Johnson Invader. So that's on the short list to get it up and running. So let's see. And the same guy that gave me the R55 gave me the R100, and I've got an antenna on it, and I do a little shortwave listening with it. That's pretty much all I do. But with this radio is some nights there's not as much shortwave as there used to be when I was a kid. And listen to the BBC and Radio Moscow and Radio Peking and all of that, and Voice of America. But it's still fun to tune around occasionally. I did a little bit of work on the Gonset 63 here. I bought it just because I think it's just a flippin' cool radio. You know, it's just the design of it. You know, it looks like the dashboard of a 53 Buick or something. So I just really like it. Hammerland HQ 200. Don't see too many of those around. So that's got a problem in a filter. I'm going to have to hand build a filter for it. But I'm gonna have to build that. Other than that, then yeah, there's a couple of transoceanics up there. I got a couple of more hidden away. Some more general little receivers. This little guy here, I've always just thought was just a cool little thing. So you know, so anyway, so that's just pretty much. Oh, and the holocrafters here. This radio, of course, there's a light in the way, but the front panel and stuff was designed by Raymond Loewy. So I think that was pretty cool. So it needs a little work, but you know, it's on the list. And this Hammerland HQ 140, I used to work in marine electronics in Newport Beach. And the guy had this on the shelf, had the shop, and it's still got a sticker from LA County Emergency Communications kind of a thingy on it there. So so that in fact, actually there's the replacement capacitor up on top to get it going. So on this side of the hallway, yeah, this is my workbench. Let me see if I can keep track of everything here. So yeah, so this is my workbench. You know, there's a scope down there, and you know, a Sansui with a couple of Advent speakers up there. But just your basic stuff. I'm working on a old FADA radio right now for a guy in the club. Where's the but anyway, it's on its back anyway. So let's see. And here's my my Swan SS 216B. Now that's supposed to be a fairly rare bird. There it is. Okay, it's supposed to be a fairly rare bird, and it had some battered solder joints and stuff in it, and I think it's working. So it's I haven't put it on the round table yet, but it's going to be. A couple other radios. This is an Alta 103, and that's a pretty unique radio. It's also out of Oceanside. A guy had a electronics company and a sailboat, and decided he wanted to build a good transceiver, and so he built these. And there's not many of those floating around either, because the company was only in existence a couple of years. So, and then down below that is the Atlas 215X. It's been on the air. Let's see. I just ran over my, there we go. So there's the Heath kit there. The 104. I used to have the whole set for it, but it just took up too much space. So in fact, Dennis, I think, got the amplifier, something like that. So it hasn't been on the air in a while either, but it works. And then an NCX5. So that's on the air every now and then for the round table. And then this is a pretty unusual radio here. This is the Trio TS510. And the guy I got this from brought it from Japan. In fact, some of the manuals are in Japanese. So, and it's a pretty cool radio. So it's got a remote VFO and all that. Uses sweep tubes for finals, and it's a nice little radio. I've had it maybe 15 years or something. So and then another Atlas. Let's see. Yeah, I like this one. I like the dot matrix display on it. It's I think that's pretty cool. And so yeah, so that's the 250 extra large, 250 XL. There's a Swan Signet 300 Bravo, and a Swan, and let's see, where is it? Yeah, there we go. A Swan 500 with no suffix, single year manufacturer only. Then my just love it, my Swan 400. I've had that thing, God, 20 years, and it's also like the first one that I ever had, but this one I got about 15 years ago or something, maybe 20. But it's probably one of the last one built. I checked with the people on the SwanNet, gave them the serial number, and it might have been built after they officially stopped. It's a very low number. Just a MFJ antenna tuner, a 2-meter 440, 220 transceivers down here, and then my ubiquitous, just forever, Yaesu FT 5000 DX transceiver. That's the base station for everything, with the scope up on top and everything, and also a Drake R7 receiver that also came. All these friends, their dads keep dying. I keep getting the equipment, but it's also from a Silent Key, and a friend of mine that I have a drink with every Friday just about gave me that radio. It came with the box and the manual and the whole shooting match. So and it has an antenna and everything to it, and I use it for monitoring the bands. And then yeah, then there's my my vintage carbon mic up here with the call letter flag up on top and stuff like that. So so I'm very proud of that. Anyway, I think that covered it. Go ahead, Dennis. It's all yours.
All right, Glenn, very good. Well, okay. Well, we'll get started here. This is actually one of my favorite radios to operate. This is was introduced in the late 70s, around 1980 from Rockwell Collins. It's a KWM 380, and it's a really nice radio. It's a simple radio to operate. It's got a dual VFOs, runs sideband and CW, but you can also receive on AM, which is nice. It's got selectable filters. It was really I'll call it an idiot-proof radio. It really is a nice set. And like I say, I love the audio on it. The audio quality on transmit is really quite nice, as well as receive. So this is actually my main operating position here. As I pull back, you'll see off on the left-hand side, Dave was showing off a KWM2A. That's what we've got over here. Collins KWM2A with a 312B5 remote VFO. These are, of course, round emblem, as opposed to winged emblem, the two different styles there. Next is another one of my favorite radios, which is not quite so vintage. It's a Yaesu FT 1000 Delta. And I swear, I love the feel of this radio. This has got the nicest tuning dial of any radio I own. And we've got a lot here, as you'll see. Let's see, the KWM radio. The other thing at my main operating position is a more modern radio. We have a Flex 7800. And there's the display from the 7800. There's nothing on. I'm hooked up on 20 meters and nothing's happening over there, so it's quiet for some reason. But there's the there's the Flex right there, along with one of my amplifiers, an Alpha 87 that I use with the Flex, as well as the KWM 380, the FT 1000D, and the KWM 2A. And those are all selected by using a patch panel right here to be able to select which radio that's why there's nothing on the Flex, because I don't have the radio. There it is. That's more like what you'd see on the Flex right there. That looks a little bit more busy on 20 meters. So that's pretty typical. So that's this setup. Now, this is my main operating desk. There's also a 7300 down in the corner there and a 9700. And both of those are primarily used for digital WinLink is what those are primarily used for. So we do a lot of emergency communications with our group here. I'm an emergency coordinator for Eastern Kern County ARES, and we have a very strong WinLink contingent here in our group, ARES group. So that's good. My second operating position here, this is my second desk. This is all Collins S-Line. And you'll see it uses a 30S1. This is their one of their amplifiers that they made. Dave was showing the 30L1. This is the 30S1. Uses a single 4CX1000 as a final. And this is the later S-Line of a 32S3A, this guy here. These are all round emblem, late models, and a 75S3C. And next to these is one that's rather near and dear to me. This receiver I purchased in 1969. It was a Christmas present from my parents when I got my novice license. My parents gave me the money to go pick a radio out. Said, whatever you want. We went over to Henry Radio in West Los Angeles, West LA, and that's the radio I picked, and it's still with me, and it's part of my system here. I can turn in. By the way, one of the things you'll note is all these radios are always in either standby or operate. I never use the off position. The power switches on these old Collins radios are really fragile. So I use an Ethernet controlled power strip and something called a stream deck, which is this guy here. And I use the stream deck to turn these radios on and off. So I can turn off that 75S3 over here by just pushing a button. Kind of like what Dave has, but it's done through the internet or through my network, my intranet here in the facility. So that's one of my S lines. We have several. So let's see some other interesting sets here. These are not on the air right now. These are what were referred to as the Gold Dust Twins. If you've heard of that from Collins, the KWS1, the KWS1 and 75A4. Still today, fantastic receivers. The 75A4s are just marvelous. And these, I hope to get back on the air. They're both operating, but they're not on the air right now because I don't have any place to put them besides storing them over against the window. So eventually they'll get put on the air. We'll move around here to the other side here. This is another S line right here. We have a 32S3 here and a 75S3B. So we've got the only one we don't have is a 75S3A. There was an A model. I don't have any 75S1 gear, and I have no 75S2. But the S3, the S3B, and the S3C I have several of the 75S3s that are operating. A couple of 30L1s. Now, one of these 30L1s gets used with another Drake TR4CW right here with a remote VFO, so I can operate split. And one 30L1 gets used with the S line here. Moving over to the next desk. These are my most recent acquisitions here. So we've got a Heathkit SB104 line. So we've got the 104. I can't remember this. This is a 10. It is a 104A. I was trying to remember if it's 104 or 104A. I've got several of them. A 104 with the 630 amplifier next to it. We've got the station control, the console, remote VFO, the scope up here to be able to monitor, and power supply speaker here. Then up here on the top shelf, I've got this is kind of another one that's somewhat kind of rare, are the Swan Twins. This is the only Swan gear I have. I used to have some other Swan gear, but now it's in Glenn's shack, that SS200 that he was talking about. So that went to Glenn. But this is the 600T 600R custom. And the custom had a special AM filter in it. So that's kind of a unique one. They did not make many of them, but that's kind of a nice set and it works very nicely. And like Dave, I have a system where I switch between them. And this came from Jim Garner. Let's see, I got to remember, it's either W8 or W9ZR. He was really put a lot of stuff into QST and a lot of construction articles. This was one of his projects, was a station controller too. And so that's how I switch between the radios on this desk here. So I can select the Swan, I can select the Heathkit, or another nice radio, which is not on the air yet. It's working, but it's not on the air. I need to get a fan for it. And that's a Hallicrafters SR2000 Hurricane, one of the disaster radios. The SR2000, it's a kilowatt radio, uses some, I got to remember what they are. The finals are kind of hard to come by. They're practically unobtainium. But I've got the complete system with the external VFO, the transceiver, power supply, as well as some other bits and pieces that go with it from Hallicrafters. So another set here, we've got some Hammerland equipment on the bottom. There's an HX50 transmitter along with an HQ100 receiver that happens to be was a gift from my wife who disappeared somewhere. I don't know where she went. She was here a minute ago, but she's KF6QNG. She picked that up unbeknownst to me at one of the ham fests and got it home secretly so that I could have it. And an HXL1 amplifier to go with that system. Also, there's a KWM1, which was Colin's one of the first integrated transceivers ever made, KWM1, which is also working. I've got the power supply, external power supply, and external speaker for it, as well as a couple of, they have some plug-in modules. This was always called the novice adapter for it, but it allows you to put it on some different frequencies because it was only in 100 kilohertz segments when you tune it. On top of that is kind of an unusual radio. This is the Kachina. You may have heard of Kachina out of Arizona. This is an HF transceiver called a KC103. And we picked this up a couple of years ago. I've had this one on the air on the round table a few times. And it's an interesting radio. It's general coverage. So it's not an amateur radio. It's a general coverage HF set. And then, of course, Signal One, another famous American manufacturer, or infamous as the case may be, Signal One CX11A. And this is about the seventh, I have to confess, the seventh Signal One radio that I've owned, and it's by far the nicest one out of all of them. I've had a bunch of CX7s, but this one was really special, the CX11A. And we go to the next room. Now this room is primarily AM, and you've seen some pictures of this on my QRZ page. This is all Collins A-line equipment. You'll have things like 75A2s, 75A2 receivers. I got two of those there, a 32V3 transmitter down here, and the SC101 station control that actually goes with the KWS1 and 75A4. I mentioned as one of the manufacturers of Central Electronics, this happens to be a Central Electronics monitor scope for modulation monitoring. I've got a few other bits and pieces of Central Electronics gear, but it's not in here right now. It's stored at the moment because I don't have room for it. One of my prized possessions over here in the corner is the Collins KW1. There were only 150 of these. Actually, there were 152. There were two prototypes, but we only count the 150. And this is number 117 out of 150 that were manufactured. So that's a nice kilowatt AM radio, AM transmitter. And I use that with the 75A2. And that 75A2 that I use that with is, you know, Dave was talking about his SP600 is his favorite AM receiver. That's my favorite AM receiver. That 75A2 is, it's actually a 75A2A. So it has two crystal positions that for our filter positions. That's what this little lever is right here, is for selecting a filter. And one of these receivers has an inductor capacitor network, an LC network for a filter for AM, and it just sounds beautiful. So my other part of the AM system is over here on the other side of the room. And Dave wasn't able to show you his 20V, but I can show you my 500, my 550 A1, which is the baby brother of Dave's 20V2. And I can turn this on right here. I can flip the switch and it comes up. You can see it all light up. That is my one of 3 AM broadcast transmitters. The one over here on the end was made by Western Electric. It's a Western Electric 451A1 that was manufactured in the 30s. It was the last AM broadcast transmitter that Western Electric made. And we're talking about industrial design. This was designed by a fellow by the name of Henry Dreyfuss, a very, very well-known industrial designer from the 30s. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful trend. I just love those meters. That just reminds me of a Volkswagen Bug speedometer. And then over here is one guy that's awaiting conversion. That's another Collins 820D2, which is another kilowatt broadcast transmitter that's going to be converted up to 160 meters eventually. It's just taking up space right now. Now, like Dave, we have this is a Collins 212B2 mixer from the 50s. That's been actually restored. It's not been refinished. It's kept in its original condition, but it's been restored and recapped. And this is a beautiful mixer with an RCA, like Dave's got the 77DX. This is a 74B Junior is what this microphone is. It's another ribbon microphone. Audio quality on this is superb. I use a Stream Deck here as well to turn on all my gear. I can turn on my audio chain, which is a compressor limiter and equalizer. I've got a modulation monitor like Dave was showing, the REA monitor up on top of the transmitter there. I can turn it on remotely. We've got an audio system here with a monitor amplifier, which happens to be a Mac. I think it's a Mac. I can't remember what it is now. It's Mac 30, something like that. All old Macintosh tube amp. I use an R390A for my primary receiver here. This R390, which is actually, if you look at it carefully, it's an R1247 that was constructed by Manson Labs. It was a modification that they did to that receiver to use an external synthesizer for frequency control. But this one is all original. It was designed so that you could bypass all of that with relays. Most people, when they get one of these, they rip all the relays out and bypass it. Well, all the relays are still in here. So if I ever find one of the synthesizers, I can put that radio back on the synthesizer. I just have to plug it in. So that's kind of a cool item. So we've got the 212B2, and Dave was talking about the tape decks. This is the Ampex 351. So this is a 2-track quarter-inch reel-to-reel tape drive, and my other one's a 4-track TAC, which is more modern, A3440. So another nice piece of gear in here. Everything's managed through a patch panel. I can bypass things and switch them around and reconnect stuff down there. That's what patch panels are for. So that's all this gear. A couple of more pieces of gear here. A nice National HRO 60. I just love the HRO 60s with all their plug-in coils. You can see that they're squirreled around in back of the monitor there. There's all the coils. A 32V2 AM transmitter. And a Helicrafters SX28. This is actually an SX28A with a matching speaker. And I mentioned the company Eldeco, which was another manufacturer back in the 50s and 60s. Eldeco did a lot of cloning of the Collins A-line and S-line equipment. So you see that there. Some of the other gear that's in here, one thing that it's really kind of amazing is this guy. This is some early Collins gear. This is from the 30s. That is a 30FXR, late 30s transmitter, AMCW. I think it's about 500 watts that will put out. But this one over here, there's another rack full of old vintage gear here. This is one of the Collins early exciters that was mass produced as a 4A exciter. So that's like a little 20-watt transmitter, based by itself a transmitter. And a friend of ours, Dave and Glenn know, Gary Halverson, K6GLH, built this transmitter using 30s technology, 30s components, built it around this 4A exciter, which is the real deal. and built this 500 watt AM CW transmitter to go with that exciter. And of course, the other thing that's not on the air right now, because I don't have a place to plug it in, is a Johnson kilowatt. And I just got the pedestal. I don't have the desk. So some more, Johnson kilowatt desk. Some later Collins equipment. If I get this thing around, there it is. HF80 system, which was used a lot by commercial entities and the government, of course. The State Department used them. This consists of this. These are the exciter and receiver. The amplifier and power supply and some other components are in the next room where the AM broadcast transmitters are, because the stuff is really, really noisy. So it's just cabled up. We can actually separate it by quite a distance and have the transmitter and power supply, and it could be in another building. The FAA made use of these as well. And speaking of the FAA, I've got a couple more things I'm going to share. So I think we're getting close to the top of the hour. I don't know if you noticed my digital clocks everywhere. I do have time code running around the shack. I use it's IRIG B, a bunch of datum electronics time displays. So I've got these all over the place. But thinking about national and the FAA and its predecessor, the CAA, this is one of 300 that were manufactured in the early 30s. It's a national AGS. It's kind of a rare set. This one's under restoration. There's one down here. This is the prototype. This is the RHM, was the prototype to the AGS. And these were done under contract by National Radio. They were contracted through General Electric, who had a contract to build a communication system for the Civil Aviation Authority, the CAA, back in the day, that became eventually the FAA. GE didn't have any receivers, so they went to National and said, build us a receiver. And this is what they came up with, was the RHM and the AGS. And there's three models. I have the other model. It's not on display. It's an AGS X. It has a crystal filter in it that this one doesn't have. Along the amateur lines, everybody's familiar with the HRO, I would hope, National HRO. This particular one is an early production. This was probably made in the second month of production of the HRO. And the way you can tell is this pearl button right here. That's the S meter button. Select the S meter. It was a pearl button on the first couple of months they made these. And then they switched over to a push-pull switch, which you can see on some other ones I have here. German silver PW dial. The rest of them are all black like this guy. But those first couple of months, they were silver like that. So that's a rather special receiver right there. And the other one I've got that I'll talk about is this guy right here. Now, Dave's got a Super Pro, the SP600. This is the birth of the SP600 right here. This is a Hammarlund Comet. And if you look for information on the Hammarlund Comet, you're probably not going to find it. You'll find information on a Comet Pro. But this radio was not in production for very long. It was very short-lived because it had some problems that they corrected with the Pro. But this guy is untouched. It's kind of scuffed up. It needs to have the front panel refinished, but it's not been modified in any way. It's even got a walnut cabinet. I don't know if you can see the cabinet there. It's a walnut case that it's in. And it's a superb example of the Comet. And they made very, very few of those guys. So let's see, anything else in here I can share? That's pretty much the gist of it. There's a lot of stuff in here. I generally don't turn the camera in this direction because it's kind of messy over on this side of the room, as you can see. But I guess the one last thing I should mention is antennas. We got to have antennas for all this stuff. And here in this room, I'll have to explain. The ham shack isn't finished yet. We still got a lot more work to do on this ham shack. But this rack right here is where I do all my antenna switching. So I'm able to route antennas to all the desks, the AM studio, the two desks on the other side, the two desks here on this side of the room, from an 160 meter horizontal loop, an 80 meter 4-square array made with high gain high towers. We've got an inverted V for 75 and 80 meters. That's up on a 55-foot tower. A dipole for 40 meters that's sprung between two 60-foot towers. Then the two towers, two HX 555 towers out back. One's got a 10-meter 5-element Yagi on it, and I can select which desk that goes to right here. And I've got a 20-meter 3-element Yagi up there that I can do the same with. It's on another tower. And on this same tower with the 20-meter Yagi is a 5-element 6-meter antenna. So that's how I route everything around. And my modern equipment here, I've got a little Alpha 87A amplifier down there that I use with the Flex and with the KWM 380 and all that other stuff. So I think that's it. That's pretty much it. I won't take you into the workshop because I could spend a whole day in there. I know Dave showed you his corner, but that's what lies beyond that doorway is my workshop. It's cleaner than it used to be, but it's still kind of a mess. So I will forego doing that. And let's see what I can do is, let's get back here to where I need to be. And I can switch over to, let's see. I guess I can shut this one down and I'm back on my other login there somewhere. Anyway, well, yeah, I know what I can do. Here we go. Hopefully you guys are still hearing me. I'm not hearing anybody out there. Hopefully you all are still there.
We're here.
Oh, good. Okay. Where is it? Oh, there we go. I'll just flip that around this way so that you can see me now. I'll just do that. Oh, all right. That should do it. I'm going to, Dan, I'm going to close out my my Zoom on my iPhone, and I'll go back to the desktop computer here. So I'm just going to shut that down so I can use the other audio system. Okay, I'm back here now. So you should be hopefully seeing me on a different camera now, and I can shut this whole thing down on my little remote camera.
No, I don't see you.
Hopefully you're, oh, there we go. Now you should be able to, I should be able to hear you now.
Yeah, and I don't see you. We got Glenn there. Hi, Glenn.
Yeah, I think you got Glenn. Is Glenn still pinned? I think that's what's.
We can open this up for questions if you like.
Yeah. Well, we can handle the questions. We got Gene, N3XUS.
Yeah, go ahead, Gene.
Yeah, I'm using an iPad. Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What adaptations did you have to do to your main power coming into the house to accommodate all that excellent equipment?
For myself, I don't know about the other guys. I can answer my answer here for us. We have a 200 amp service to the house, and we have a branch circuit off of the main load center at the house to this ham shack, which is a 100 amp circuit that comes out here. And we don't run everything at once. I can actually try to run 3 radios on HF simultaneously on separate antennas. I am set up that I can do that. I can route all my antennas around to be able to do that. So I try not to run 3 amplifiers at the same time, though, but that would put a pretty good load on the system. But
what about additional grounding and bonding? How did you do that?
Okay, so grounding and bonding right now is temporary because this Radio Shack is still under construction. I have to tell you that the Radio Shack here, where we are right now, is in a 60-foot single wide mobile home. We've got 2 of them side by side. The other one is still under construction. I should say, let's call it renovation, remodeling, to get it gutted and painted and fixed up. Once that's all done, we'll have a new load center installed that'll feed both of those. So we'll have all of our grounding through the new system. One of the problems is we live in the desert. Getting a ground in the desert is difficult. So I primarily use for my ground point, single point ground. Everything's tied back to the load center, which is a branch load center for this structure. And that all ties back through the Edison, Southern California Edison system back to the main ground at the service entrance. I have my cable entry is I have a steel plate that I've mounted a number of surge, the what do you call them? Polyphasers, and the what was the other company? It's the stuff that Array Solutions sells now. The lightning suppressors, the lightning arresters. I've got a bunch of those on a steel plate that's grounded, and all my coax, everything comes in through that plate and is routed into here. Eventually, this rack with all the antenna switching on it is going to move to the other side, closer to that entry point where all the cables come in. It's going to be right next to it when that's finished, and that'll again have a common ground and be properly bonded. And we will put a bunch of ground rods in. Not that they're going to do any good here, unfortunately, but we rely primarily on the Edison grounds. And of course, the load center has its own ground, and it's bonded back to I should say the branch load center has its own ground, and that's all bonded back to the service entrance load center. So we tried to do what we could under the circumstances here. So hopefully that answers that.
Did you have any problems with either the local municipal code department or your insurance company concerning all this?
All of this, not yet. We had the electrical system was inspected. We actually live in an unincorporated county, so we had the house built, and all the electrical system was inspected and signed off by the county inspectors. So that was all taken care of. And insurance, we've got this building is covered as part of our insurance policy as an outbuilding. It's not connected to the house, it's a separate building, and it is connected under our insurance policy. At least the last time I looked at it is, right, Lisa? Yeah, she's shaking her head, yes. It's all covered under our insurance policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just wondering about that because especially with the towers, I would have to get code department out here. I'm in Killeen, Texas, and I would have to get the city code department to come out here to do inspection. And before they would sign off on anything, an electrician would have to come out, regardless of what I did, regardless of my qualifications.
Sure.
Another outside electrician would have to come out and sign off on anything that I did, he did, she did, whatever. And
all of the electrical work here was done by a licensed contractor who built our house. So he did all the electrical work here for me on the ham shack and all of that at the same time. So it's all good, all to code.
that's outstanding. I mean, I'm glad to hear that, for operation, for safety, especially for safety, and
For safety, absolutely.
the financial aspect that's another issue altogether, but it sounds like you get that under control.
I was going to ask Dave. Dave, did you have to do anything with your electrical for your 20V2?
I just have, do you hear me okay? You hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Yeah, for the 20V2, well, basically I just have standard 100 amp service here from the 1970s when this house was built. And I had an extra space for a 240 breaker, and I just put a 30 amp breaker in. An electrician put it in. I can't, I'll have to say I didn't ask the city about anything or anything at all. So I just put it in. And as far as the shack, I have two circuits in here, two 20 amp, 120 volt circuits. And I kind of judiciously run things so I don't overload anything. Actually, I have an app here. It's kind of interesting on my iPad that measures my power consumption. So right now the house is drawing 2,290 watts. My shack is drawing about 700, and I see it just went up since I heard my computer speed up. And there's a second circuit in here that's drawing about 350 watts, but that's shared between some other rooms in the house. So, I'm not approaching anything near the limits of the circuits. And of course, I'm not transmitting either, but I know when I transmit, I'm within the ratings of the breakers.
Okay, what about backup power?
Backup power, well, I have battery backup here in the shack. So my modern radio here, the 7610 will operate, and the control box for antenna routing. And then if I really run out of power, I can hook up about a 2400 watt generator in the garage. It's kind of not easy, but if I need to, I can. I've had to use it a couple of times. So I found that, if I don't run the ham radio, like I said, the whole house is drawing 2300 watts right now. And while my wife isn't watching TV, I know that, but we can run our bedroom, split air conditioner, TVs, our refrigerators, and a few other things with that generator and keep going in the house. If I had to run a ham radio for emergencies, I could, though.
I take that's not gasoline powered.
No, I converted it to propane. I have propane tanks around.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about exhaust coming into the house.
Well, it does produce, it produces harmful exhaust, but I just couldn't really maintain a gas generator, keep the gas fresh and all that. It was, I was too lazy or whatever to do that. So I converted it to propane, and I have, I think, maybe 6 or 8 days of propane if I'm judicious about how we use the electricity here, if we had an earthquake or something like that.
That's outstanding. Great job.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Back to you, Dennis.
Yeah, I love Barry's comment there. Not really.
Well, if he's back, let's get him in here. What do you got in chat there, Barry?
We're good in chat. There's a lot of good comments, but no real questions.
Okay, it's been a great presentation. I feel like I'm in my teens again.
Jed's been here and visited the shack, so he knows what this place is like. And N6JED. Yeah, it's a little cleaner than it was when you were here, Jed. I will confess. It's been straightened up a bit.
And we saw Lisa for a brief moment back there.
She's here. Come here. Oh, she's being shy, but yeah, there's KF6QNG right there.
No,
Okay, hi.
So she gets to play with all this stuff too.
Yeah,
Okay,
Dennis, we need to do this more often. This is the cleanest this shack has been in. I have no idea how long.
Cool. Oh, that's funny. I think Gene has another question. His hand's up again.
Oh, yeah, just me being nosy. I'm trying to think what I was going to ask you. Lisa, how do you feel about so much space being occupied with this equipment? I mean, it's great, but if my wife, if I'd try to do something like that, I'd be out of the house and I would have this equipment out on the street, not by me, but
well, that's easy because it's a whole completely different buildings. They're two mobile homes
260
connected.
foot mobile homes connected, yeah.
So, and our living space is a completely separate building. So,
okay, he did say that.
yeah,
I don't have that luxury of or acreage to put up a separate building. And if I did, I'd probably be living out there, and that'd be another issue altogether.
We specifically moved out here to this area. We've got a 5 acre lot here, and there's actually several buildings on the lot. We've got our main home, living facilities that we had built. There's another house on the southern end of the property, which gets mainly used for storage. And then there's the ham shack, which is the 260 foot single wide trailers, mobile homes, and got a detached garage and a couple of other sheds and lots of space for antennas.
In talking with people who aren't into ham radio, and you start talking about, what ham radio is, the public service, all that kind of stuff. Do you ever invite people out there to come see that
Oh, yeah.
collection of history that you have there, and they like pass out?
Actually, yes. In fact, we just had a big house full the other night. We have visitors stop by. In fact, there's a number of people who are on here tonight have been by here over the years. Of course, Glenn's been up here and stayed with us a few times. Dave, you've never made it up here. Dave is still, he's not made it to Faraday Fields. Marty's been here. Jed's been here. I don't know who else is on there that's been here. I think right now everybody else has left, but yeah, we love having visitors, because we're out in the middle of, well, I like to say we're out in the middle of everywhere. We're, here in Inyokern, it's pretty rural. And so our neighbors are quite a ways away. And it's a small town. We're actually outside of the town. We're in an unincorporated county area, but they still consider it an Inyokern mailing address. And we're just a little ways off of Highway 395 going up through the Eastern Sierras here in California. So yeah, it's a great place. Before I moved up here, all of this stuff, well, not all of it, because I've obtained a lot since I moved up here, but a majority of this stuff was in another place where I lived in Fullerton down in Orange County. And Dave has been to that house a few times, and Glenn's been there a few times. Marty's been there. And that was really set up like a museum. I had the house was beautiful for showing all this stuff off. It was really magnificent. But and I have got so much stuff that's not on display and not hooked up. It's in storage because I don't have the space for it yet. We've got to get that other half finished of this building. Once that's done, I can get a lot of the other gear out. And like Glenn has some of the early the radio sets from like the 20s and all of that. I've got boxes and boxes of early broadcast radios from like the 20s or actually older than that.
Okay, I signed in kind of like late tonight, got distracted earlier, but from everything that I've seen so far, maybe I missed it, I do not see a single HT.
A single HT.
No.
Handheld.
They're actually in the house.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we do use HTs for our emergency communications. We both have a bunch of HTs, but that stuff is kept in the house. I will confess, we have one radio in the house that's strictly used on 2 meters for our local nets here in the valley.
Okay.
And I promised Lisa when we built the house that's the only radio that would be in the house that we would use. Strictly used on 2 meters. And
by seeing the nod in Lisa's head, she concurs with that.
Yeah, me too. I don't want that stuff in the house. That's why we've got this separate building. I mean, that's our living space, and it's a drag. You have to come out here through the rain and all of that to get to the ham shack, but that's okay. What?
You poor baby.
I'm oh,
All right. Hey, great job, great presentation. I appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity to answer my questions. And
well, you're welcome, and thank you.
Both of you have fun out there and get the message through.
We hope to do this. We hope to be able to do this again and get some more guys from our vintage group up here and have them. I've got at least one request from one more person who was he just had some surgery, so he would have participated tonight, but he couldn't. But he wants to participate if we do it again, so we'll definitely get him in here. And he's got some wonderful radios in his home. So
Great, y'all have a great night. I'm going mute.
Likewise, thank you.
Okay, Glenn, we didn't briefly, can you tell us about your antennas?
You're muted, Glenn.
There I go.
There you go.
Well, I had to find myself because people are dropping off and I keep moving around on the screen. I don't have any antennas. I have a antenna. It's an off-center fed dipole at about 32 feet. It's actually, I've been using it for almost 15 years now. Same one that Bob Brame actually markets. It's an odd cut. Most off-center fed dipoles are like 33% by 66% of whatever the wavelength's going to be. and this one is 20% and 80%. So it's 27 feet and something inches on one side and 109 feet and something or other on the other side. And it loads up 10 through 80 meters, all the work bands, the whole thing. It's a marvelous antenna, and I've worked 226 confirmed countries. So, you know, it's just for a chunk of wire out there, it does well. The fact that I'm 600 feet above the valley, or 400 feet above the valley floor, that helps too. But yeah,
Okay,
that's my antenna.
thank you very much. Appreciate that. Dave, you may reference to your antennas. You want to be a little more specific about them?
Yeah, well, I have twice as many antennas as Glenn, so I have, I showed you my switching here, but I have an 80-meter antenna that I built first. That's when I first got interested in AM and actually becoming a ham about the year, what was it, 2000, a little earlier than that. So I put up an 80-meter antenna built using about number 8 wire for my
Jeez.
big old transmitter here. And then later on, I just added a multi-band dipole for 40, 20, 15 and 10, I believe it is. So that's basically my very modest setup. The antennas are strung up in the trees. There's a hill out behind the house with trees on it, and that's what I have.
Okay, it sounds like they
Oh,
work.
I can tell you that Dave is extremely loud up here in Inyokern. And he's what is that, Dave? Maybe what, 150 miles? Maybe not that.
Yeah, maybe not that far. Yeah.
Yeah, probably 120, 130 miles away. But you just have a bodacious signal up here on the nets, especially on the AMI net. That you got a wonderful signal. He's got one of the most, Dave has got one of the most beautiful AM signals you ever would want to hear on 75 meters, on 3870. It's just a pleasure to listen to you on the air. It's really,
Well, thank you. Well, you know, I have, as I've shown, it's basically a broadcast station audio chain here and a broadcast transmitter. So I would hope that it sounds good.
it sounds great.
I was actually almost waiting for Wolfman Jack to come on.
Yeah.
You love me, baby. You love me,
Yeah.
baby.
Well, I used to be a disc jockey a little bit when I was in college, but I was pretty bad. So
Yeah.
I just play music.
I used to actually engineer for a radio station. You know, I'd cue everything up and let the DJ do all the blah blah blah, but I did all the queuing up and stuff like that every now and then stuff. And I worked for a couple of bootleg stations and you know, fun things like that. So yeah, that was back in the 60s. I had a good time. And I am putting up one more other antenna, so I'll equal Dave. I'm actually, I've got it strung. I just haven't gone any further. A 107-foot random length, except for it's not random because I picked 107 feet specifically because it's not any kind of multiple of any other, you know, anything on the ham bands. And I picked up a marine grade SGC antenna tuner. So that will cover 160 through whatever. So I'm going to be hooking that 107-foot wire antenna, mostly so I can do better on 160 meters. But yeah, that's about it.
Glenn, you've got one other antenna that you didn't talk about. Your receive antenna.
Oh, my receive antenna. That's true. I came across it someplace on the internet, but it's they call it a log, and it's loop on ground. And it's basically a diamond shaped 60-foot loop that lays smack dab on the ground. It feeds through like a 2 to 3 like 2 windings on one side, 3 on the other, little ballon in a box. and strictly for receive. And Dennis was over, and he's like, "Oh, that'll never work." And I brought him in the shack, and there's this guy, and he's like right at the noise level, and you just almost couldn't hear him. Is there? And I went to the receive button, and all of a sudden, all the noise is gone, and it's all audio. And Dennis is like, "You convinced me." You know, he was like, "Whoa." So yeah, I use that a lot when there's real high noise levels and stuff. It drops. It's like messing with the RF gain. It takes everything down to zero, and the only things left is audio. And like I said, it's just kind of a diamond shaped a loop. Literally, I've got tent pegs holding it on the ground so the bunnies don't trip over it. And it's just amazing. I built it with, actually, was it RG 213 or something, little tiny coax, soldered the ends together on both ends and ran it out. And it's an amazing receive antenna.
It sounds like it.
Glenn, oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, Glenn, when I got home from your place, I wound the ballon for it. I just have never packaged it and put it out there. There's the ballon. You can see it.
Yeah, it's just received, so there's no, you don't need a lot of oomph to it.
Little tiny binocular ballon that I have. Yeah. So that's cool. All right.
And to put one more plug, Marty, particularly, did you see the article in the Guardian? I thought I sent you some information.
Oh, yes.
So good. Okay, we got mileage out of that. After that, I did an article was published or I was interviewed by the Guardian, and about emergency communications and ham radio and all that. I then got a call from a radio station in Ottawa, and I did like a half hour over the phone thing about ham radio for that, and then an AM talk radio show like at 2:00 in the morning their time out of New York. So yeah, we've been getting some real mileage out of that. And I got contacted by a lady who does stuff for the Discovery Channel, and she's presented the idea of doing a bit on the Discovery Channel about ham radio. So we're working the hell out of it.
That's cool.
Okay.
Gene has another question. His hand's up.
Yeah, but get your hand up there, Gene. Let's keep it short so we can start wrapping up here.
Yeah.
I keep asking questions. I promise this is my last one. Again, I came in about 30 minutes late for the presentation. Is any of the things in any buy sites recycled military radios?
Sorry, what was the question?
Is anything we saw a recycled military radio?
Let's see. Let me think for a second.
Well, the R390s in a way.
Well, yeah, the R390s were certainly military, government at least. The HF80 was government, not so much used by the military, but used by State Department and what have you in my shack. I do have a lot of military radios. Ask my wife. Ask Lisa about my military radios. My very first rig as a novice was an ARC 5. You know, I repurposed an ARC 5, a BC 696, BC 454 ARC 5 set for 80 meters and ran that as a novice. And I've still got a ton of that stuff. I've got a lot of ARC 5 stuff that I would love to get on the air.
I have a TA 312 that I'm thinking about putting to use to at least zap people.
Yeah, a lot of our guys on AM use the old T368s, which is a beautiful AM transmitter. That was those were originally made by B&W, I think. Barker and Williamson originally built those for the military, and they're a beast. You know, it's but a lot of folks use those on the ham bands. They're a beautiful transmitter, but they
there was or still is maybe a military net out here that guys get on with all their military gear.
It's the MRCG, yeah, you're a member of that, aren't you, Dave? MRCG?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was, but I don't have any military gear anymore, and I've kind
Got
of
rid of
fallen
that?
away.
You got rid of that radio you had.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was beautiful.
It was neat,
Oh,
but
that was a beautiful set.
it was getting too heavy for me to carry around
Yeah, I know the feeling.
for
Don't
10
we all?
watts, you know?
Yeah.
Guys, I got to head out, but Dennis, thank you for coming up with this great idea. And all the presenters, thank you.
Well, it was
I'm
actually
going to head out
Steve.
too. I want to thank everybody for answering my questions, making comments, and great luck to everybody with that.
Very welcome, Gene. Thank you for the
Thank you.
questions. We appreciate you being here. I was going to say, Marty was thanking us. It was really Steve that's been bugging me to do this for a long time on the committee. So I finally got the idea to ask the guys on the roundtable if they would like to come on and do this. And so here we are. So Dave and Glenn, thank you so much for doing this. I'm sorry we missed.
Glad to.
Yeah,
Glad to.
this
Yeah,
was
it was very good.
Like I told Dave, I told when we were messaging on chat during one of the sideband roundtables, I told him because he brought that up, and I said that's a stupid idea. I said, who of us wants to brag about our Radio Shack? You know? It's like, duh. Here, twist my arm.
Twist
you know?
my arm. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys stepped forward. It's been a great presentation and I love it. I mean, it's just, I'm sure everybody on here feels the same way.
Well, thanks, Dan. I'm glad the committee agreed and allowed us to do this, and I hope we can do it again soon. We'll get another crop of vintage sidebanders up here, maybe from another part of the country, because that groups.io, we've got members in that group that are all over the country. And so I have to get some of those guys on here and show off their gear. They don't join us on the nets because they're on the other side of the, on the right-hand coast. So they don't get involved. Actually, there's a couple of guys out there that do, including Bob Heil. Bob Heil gets on the AMI net from time to time.
Could I mention something about Bob Heil? Did you know that he's very ill?
No, I did not.
Oh no.
Yeah. He, gosh, I mentioned this on the Vintage Sideband Roundtable, I think on the AM group, but in May, he started having trouble getting up in the morning, getting on his feet and walking around. And it was in June, I think it was the middle of June. And within 2 weeks, he was not able to get up and walk at all anymore.
Oh my gosh.
And he sent out an email about that to some of us who he knows. And I talked to him. He went for therapy he went to ER first, of course, and he was in the hospital for a while. Then he went to therapy, and now he's in an assisted living home.
Oh, wow.
And they're hoping, or he's hoping, that they're going to get him to the point he can walk again. And it isn't anything like a stroke or anything like that. I don't exactly know what it is, except he talked about he had severe neuropathy. He had several conditions. And it's really sad. He was, in the beginning of June, he was feeling normal, his normal self. By the end of June, he was in emergency room.
Just never know. Just never know.
That's true. That's true.
So I'm sure he'd appreciate hearing from folks, emailing him and so on.
Yeah. Wow, Dave. Well, thank you for letting us know.
Well, sorry to bring up that bummer, but I thought maybe everyone knew that.
No,
actually, I hadn't heard.
had not heard that. Wow. Well.
Okay, I had to hang up on my wife, guys.
Doghouse for you tonight.
Uh-oh.
You got a spare bed over there, maybe a couch.
Yeah, we got a guest room. It'll take you a while to get here, but
Okay, I'll probably get lost in your shack.
oh no.
All righty, well,
All right,
better start wrapping this up, Dennis.
you betcha.
And say 73s, everybody. It's been a great presentation. Send me your slides, Dennis. We'll get that included.
Oh, I'll do that. You got it.